if your crank key looks anything like this, you're probably having a bad day. I know I was. It is not supposed to take all of these tools to do a timing belt service. So if your key looks like this and you're worried because your crank matches, I'm going to show you how to use one of these spacers to go ahead and fix it. Let's talk about what went wrong with our existing pin. And you can see how bent this is because it got stuck. So you can see the little bit that hangs out. That would normally feed in to the crank boss here like this. So this whole assembly is still going to go in there. And then instead of this keyway just hanging out in excess after everything's assembled, so something like that. I'm being a little dramatic with the assembly. But once that's all assembled, that key's going to hang out still a little bit. And this is going to go in and capture the other end of the key. And then the crank bolt is going to go through it all and hold it all in. All it does is capture that end of the key that would otherwise be hanging out. And then the crank bolt is going to go in and tie it all into itself. You can get this with a bad harmonic balancer. This is probably me over tightening the crank bolt and screwing this up at one of my previous timing belt jobs or oil seal jobs. Might have been trackside and a moment's notice kind of thing, so you just ugga-dugga it on, but this is why we have torque specs. Now we have all our gear off. We have to knock this down just a little bit. You can see some of my following marks where I got started, but there's a little bit of a high side right here, which means that our crank boss can't slide back on quite correctly. So we're just going to knock that down little by little, and I'm going to keep checking the boss interstitially because you don't want to grind this too much. We're just trying to recover the roundness from it. I had a grinding stone wheel on here. That's pretty aggressive, so now I'm going to go to something a little more mild. This is like a jewelry file or a piston ring file, and we're just going to smooth it out, and that should give us just the right clearance. Don't try and do this whole thing with a grinder or you're going to be buying a new crank. And you'll also notice that I didn't just keep it on one high side when I was grinding. I'm moving it around. Just like when you're doing body work, you don't sand in just one spot. You don't sand just where you have the Bondo. You need to feather it. All right, we're ready for a final assembly here. Well, final test fit. So we're gonna put the boss on, line that keyway up. We got our measured 100 times, filed 1,000 times key. You can see that goes all the way in. Now, normally we put a plastic cover here, but we're still test fitting to make sure it fits. So good, you see that in there. And then you see how much this key's hanging out. This is a good example of what we're gonna do. So the plug that we're adding is also keyed. It's gonna capture the other end of that key. That's gonna go on there. This goes on here. And then our crank bolt goes on. So that looks good, it feels good. Now we're gonna put it together the proper way with all the plastics and stuff.